busy 2 weeks, the past 2 weeks for the NBA. We'll talk about the moves in the Golden State Warriors, the artist formerly known as the Dynasty, no longer. But what a great run. And we'll talk about how you build a dynasty. It's not just getting those 2 or 3 players, bringing in a couple of guys in free agency. Golden State did it, where you do it the old-fashioned way. You draft. And if you look at who they drafted and when they drafted them, anybody could have had Klay Thompson. Anybody could have had Steph Curry. And anybody could have had Draymond Green, especially Draymond and Klay. But they take those players, and the interesting part is they've whiffed. They whiffed on James Wiseman, number 2 pick overall. But if you hit on the other ones where you get Hall of Fame players, it makes up for, golly, they missed on James Wiseman with the 2nd pick in the draft. And in that draft, who did you have? Tyrese Maxey was in that draft. Anthony Edwards was number 1. Tyrese Halliburton was in that draft as well. Lamar Ball was in that draft as well. So they had opportunities to add to that roster. And even with a whiff with the 2nd pick overall, they still held. And you know what? I give Golden State a lot of credit because their ownership, they spent more money. They went over the luxury tax, but they kept everybody together. Even when Klay Thompson was out for pretty much 2 years with injuries, they kept him. They paid him. They were loyal to everybody. But then you got to the point where they're going to move on from Klay Thompson. I thought he was going to go to Orlando. He goes to Dallas. I think it's a good move for Dallas. He's going to be the 3rd guy. And, I think his ego was bruised because he was coming off the bench. He was like, no, I don't come off the bench. It's like, you do come off the bench. If you want to extend your career, you come off the bench. I'm assuming that he starts in Dallas. But we can look at what, some of these other moves. And if you're curious, who is the odds-on favorite to win the title? It's not even close right now. It's Boston. I got the odds here according to DraftKings as of this morning, and it is Boston by far the 2nd favorite right now to win the NBA title. Todd, I'm going to let you go first. Who is by the way, great to see you, Todd.
Good to see you.
All right.
The Nuggets.
All right. Nuggets had a terrible offseason. Seton.
The Celtics?
They're 1. They're not 2, but they're 1.
They're 2.
They're so good. They're 1 and 2.
Oh, they're 1 and 2.
Although I'll give you credit for that. No, Todd was wrong. Oh. Yeah, it's not the Nuggets. Yeah, the Nuggets did not have a good offseason. Marvin, clean up the mess here.
The Thunder?
No. They're 3rd. Thunder had a great offseason, in my opinion. They're 3rd. Paul?
The Minnesota Timberwolves?
No.
Mavs?
No.
Lakers?
No.
No.
The 76ers.
That's not right.
That makes no sense.
That's incorrect.
I just going by what DraftKings has here.
Typo.
They got, playoff P. It's all you need. They're the
podcast P these days.
Podcast P.
More podcast P.
Is he more podcast than playoff P?
Done more with podcasts, so I'm going to say podcast
Yeah.
P.
I do like his voice, though. I mean, I think playoff P, podcast P has a great voice. Do you have some Paul George here? Do you have something?
I had to do it.
Why you had to go hate on him?
Come on, man. I'm in Philly.
Okay.
My idol, the Bean, Kobe Bryant. My way of idolizing Kobe, and something that meant something outside of 24 and 13. So it was only right. The 8 looks good on me.
Okay. Paying tribute to Kobe Bryant. You know how I would pay tribute to Kobe? I'd play a lot of great basketball in the playoffs. That's what I would do if I'm going to pay tribute. You can wear the number, and play great basketball. Plus, you're going to say, now, all right, I'm not going to argue too much with DraftKings because that's how they make their living with these odds. But you're going to say to me, all right, Joel Embiid and Paul George are going to play in 70 games this year? Over, under, I'm going to give you 66 over, under for both of these guys. Are you going to? How many times have they both played 70 games or more? And I don't know if they have, at least any time recently. Yes, Paulie.
Oddly, Paul George played 74 games this year, which is like, for him, that's like 100. The past 4 seasons, though, he averaged about 49 games played per season.
But if you put them together, how many times have they both played over 70 games in a season? That's what I'd be curious about.
I don't know that Joel Embiid's gotten there yet.
70 games? Yeah, probably not. Let me see if I have numbers here. All
Paul
right.
George, I think 7 times in his career. They're going way back.
Okay.
Joel Embiid has never played more than 70 games in one season.
Okay. Embiid has never topped 68. Paul George has averaged 62 games per season in his career. So that would be the reason why I'd look at that and go, things that make you go, comes down to who's going to be healthy. Because you can look at some of these teams, like the Lakers. Anthony Davis played, 75 games? LeBron was healthy for the most part. Now, their odds to win, they're not even on the board. I've got Celtics, Sixers, Thunder, Nuggets, Knicks, and then the Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves have added a couple of scores there with Anthony Edwards, and they needed that. I thought the Nuggets missed out. They let KCP go. He went to Orlando. You got the best player in the game, and you didn't add to that roster. Man, that's a missed opportunity, in my opinion. All right, we'll go poll question, Seton. I'm getting ahead of myself. We should establish here. There's order here to this program.
Yeah, we got a couple of them here, mostly centered around the Warriors.
Okay.
Let's see. Here's one from Paulie. Who got the most out of the Warriors run?
Okay. Yes, Paul.
So the genesis of this poll question is who got the most for their legacy out of this? And I think you can make the case that Steve Kerr maybe got the most out of it. Steve Kerr had a very good NBA career as a backup, but he won a lot of titles as a backup.
Yeah.
But I don't think you're going to the Hall of Fame that way. He wasn't going to the Hall of Fame. Now he's a shoe-in first ballot, Hall of Famer.
Okay. All right. I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and he kind of stumbled into it. He didn't have a coaching resume.
Well, he took over from Mark Jackson, who was more defensive-minded. Steve came in and said, no, we're going to shoot the three, and they changed basketball. Here is Steve Kerr talking about losing Klay Thompson.
I just want to say thank you to Klay Thompson for 13 incredible years, 10 of which I was there for. What he did for the team, the organization, for the Bay Area, for me personally, we were going to miss Klay. These things rarely go like you want, where you get to draw it up and execute it, and everybody goes out together. We were hoping that could happen, but it didn't. We wish Klay well, but we love him and we'll miss him. And Klay, if you're watching, thank you for everything.
All right. Some nice parting gifts there. Some nice compliments for Klay Thompson, who is going to the Hall of Fame. And you go back and look at how that roster was orchestrated, and you go back to those 3 draft picks because, Steph Curry, Minnesota passed on him twice. And he wasn't great the first couple of years because he had that bulky ankle injury. And, he was, giving you 14 points a game. Klay Thompson, 11th pick overall. And I remember watching Pac-12 basketball, and I just thought, oh, Michael Thompson's son. And then I'd go, all right, he can shoot. No, didn't think that he was going to be the shooter that he ended up being, one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. And then watching Draymond Green, it's tough to sometimes project when you're great in the Big Ten because we've seen guys be great in the Big Ten and they're not great in the NBA. Style of basketball, it's just a little different there. Draymond was one of those players where you watched and you go, man, he kind of does everything. I just don't know if he does anything really well. And then people thought, well, maybe he can be a Dennis Rodman type, play defense and rebound. And I thought, all right. And then he came in and he was far better than that. And he's going to the Hall of Fame as well. This allows you to add players. You can kind of pick and choose, and then you get role players. Harrison Barnes can be in there. You can have, who was it? Stevenson was in there. Andre Iguodala was in there. Like you just kind of, adding pieces, but you don't need to add anything major. And then they did. When they were on the verge of losing to OKC, and then Kevin Durant shocked us all by, let's go to the Hamptons, come out here and tell me how much you love me, and then I'm going to go play for Golden State. And they ended up winning a couple of titles. Then he leaves, they win another title. And which I think is the most important title that they won because it was, Steph needs Kevin Durant. Without him, they're not winning anymore. And then all of a sudden, they won that title a couple of years ago. But you have to hit, the Spurs, obviously you got David Robinson and Tim Duncan. You got David because you were bad and you got the number one pick. You got Tim because even with David being injured with the bad back, you got the number one pick. You somehow lucked into the number one pick. But you got to have Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker. That's what makes you a dynasty. That's what makes you a formidable team, keeping the pieces together. And then you have a Hall of Fame coach as well. Having those players, as great as Mike and Scotty were, you have to have Horace Grant or Dennis Rodman or Tony Kukoc. You have to. Even with the Lakers, you have to have role players with the dynasties. All the Celtic teams, the great teams, you got to have those role players who understand what their role is and they're able to contribute. And if they don't and they want to go play someplace else, you're able to kind of fill in the void. Yes, Eaton?
So, if you were creating a checklist of what a dynasty has to have, it usually starts at a draft.
It does for me because it makes it easier. I have you under contract as opposed to I got to bring you in with a larger contract.
Yeah, you can't really free agency your way into a dynasty.
Yes. I mean, it's hard to do that. Look at the Knicks now with what they did. Now, they brought in Jalen Brunson, who was undervalued, but Dante DiVincenzo, you're getting guys that kind of fit who you are, getting the right players instead of saying, hey, we got to get a big ticket item. And that's always what you hear with the Knicks. It's like, oh, you got to go get that guy, or you got to get that. You got to get Dame Lillard. You got to get – no, you don't have to. If you draft correctly, then that allows you to maybe have one or two big-ticket items. But I just don't believe – I think the days of having three true stars, I think it's over. I think it is about getting those players and drafting and role players as well. Yes, Pauline.
But your Knicks lost the heart and soul, Hartenstein, the big guy.
He went to OKC.
Took the money.
I think OKC did a great job. They got Caruso, Hartenstein. I think they're dangerous this year. That was my team last year, and they may knock on the door a little longer, a little loud. They may open the door this year. And they got rid of Josh Giddey, who wasn't good in the playoffs. He's young. He wants to start. You go to the Bulls. Remember when the Bulls used to be good?
What, Michael or
yeah, Mike and
okay.
They've been trying to trade Zach LaVine. It feels like since they got him.
Yeah.
DeMar DeRozan goes to Sacramento. Okay, and Billy Donovan's still there. I'm like, golly, they used to be the Bulls. Not anymore.